democracy is coming to the USA.
Well, folks, welcome to one more week of Move to Men Reports. I'm Egberto.
And I'm Laura Bonham. We have a terrific show lined up for you tonight. Robert Reich, Chancellor's Professor of Public Policy at the University of California at Berkeley, was Secretary of Labor in the Clinton administration. Time magazine named him one of the 10 most effective cabinet secretaries of the 20th century. He has written 13 books, including the bestsellers Aftershock and The Work of Nations. His latest, Beyond Outrage, is now out in paperback. He is also a founding editor of the American Prospect magazine and chairman of Common Cause. And his new film, Inequality For All, is now in theaters. Welcome to the show, Professor Reich. It's a pleasure to have you with us, and we appreciate your time.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're very excited about your new film. It's right up our alley. Can you tell us about Inequality For All, why you made it, and how folks can see it?
I made it because a lot of my students have been saying to me for years that although they love books, they like movies more. And they say that the best way to reach a larger audience with material that can be, if it's not handled right, can be a little bit complicated and hard to understand, is through a movie that makes it all very easy to understand, and also one that is hopefully entertaining. And about 2 years ago, a young director named Jake Kornbluth came to my office and said he wanted to make a movie. He had already done several movies and had done very well, and he wanted to make it about inequality. And we worked very hard. Jake deserves most of the credit. The movie is out now in over 100 cities. Those of you who follow Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 91% rating, which indicates that most of the reviews have been exceedingly positive, and the audiences tell me, I get a lot of responses every day, hundreds and hundreds of emails. They say that they laughed and they cried and they learned a huge amount, and a lot of people who describe themselves as conservatives or Republicans tell me that the movie has made them think much harder about these issues and get galvanized into action.
Now, Professor, after you wrote Aftershock, I think this is your first iteration after Aftershock. How do you feel about inequality, what's occurring with inequality relative to what you wrote in Aftershock for today?
Well, I did write another book after Aftershock, and it's called Beyond Outrage.
Right.
But let me just answer your question. I think that the problem of inequality has got worse in terms of more and more of the nation's resources, income and wealth concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. We know now that since 2009, the start of the recovery, 95% of all of the economic gains in this recovery have gone to the top 1%. And the median household is on a downward escalator. The median household is actually poorer today, adjusted for inflation, than that median household was in 2009, and substantially poorer than that median household was in 2000. Meanwhile, the number of people in poverty keeps going up. So this is not really a recovery. The people who are in a recovery, the people who are really doing well, are a very, very tiny fraction of the United States. We know last Tuesday, a couple of days ago, the Labor Department released information on what's happened to jobs in the month of September. That report was delayed because of the government shutdown. But we now know that 148,000 new jobs were created in September. And then that may sound like a lot, but it's really way, way below what we need in order to get back on track. We have a record number of people, 35 million Americans, who are unemployed or underemployed or have dropped out of the workforce altogether.
Now, it's interesting that you said that. Isn't it true, however, talking about the wealth disparity again, isn't it true that it's actually cooked in the way we actually tax our wealth? That, let's say, the person who has capital pays a smaller tax rate than the person who makes income, the person who works every day?
Yes, we have a higher tax rate on ordinary income, that is the income of working people who work every day, than we have on people who are basically collecting on their investments. And those people who are collecting money on their investments tend, not surprisingly, to be much richer than the people who are your working class, your middle class people who are relying on their jobs. So we're taxing unearned income at a far lower rate than we tax earned income. And we also have a lot of people on Wall Street with 7- and 8-digit figure incomes. A lot of those people, like hedge fund managers and private equity managers, they can treat their earnings, because of a quirk in the tax code that they have created for themselves and they protect, they can treat their earnings as capital gains. That is, earnings that are subjected to a much lower tax rate than ordinary income, even though they don't risk any of their own personal capital at all.
Now, why is it Let me get this
Sorry,
one in.
I was just going to mention that this is a call-in show, and I wanted to get the number out there for our listeners. If you'd like to ask Professor Reich a question, call 646-652-2345 and press 1 at the prompt. Again, that's 646-652-2345. As I'm sure you're aware from your association with Common Cause, whom we work with at times, that Move to Amend is organizing to pass an amendment that unequivocally states that people are not corporations and that money is not a protected form of political speech. Please speak to corporate rule, campaign finance, and how those doctrines have helped to create income inequality and its overall impact on democracy.
Well, there's a direct relationship between concentrated income and wealth of the sort that we've seen increasing in this country and undermining of our democracy. The last time we had this degree of concentrated income and wealth at the top was in the late 19th century, in the 1880s, 1890s. And that was a time when Justice Louis Brandeis of the Supreme Court made a very important comment. People forget, but he said, we can have a democracy or we can have great wealth in the hands of a very few people, but we can't have both. He understood even then, even in the 1880s, 1890s, that when you have hugely concentrated wealth, it almost inevitably affects our democracy. It undermines our democracy. We can't have it. We've got to have limits on how much wealth can infect our democracy, and we've got to have a more equal distribution of wealth. It doesn't mean we've got to have an equal distribution. Nobody expects that. That would not be good for our economy, and it would probably not be good for our society. But we're getting to the point where we have such extraordinary inequality, as we've talked about in our film, Inequality For All, that it hurts all of us. The very wealthy would be better off with a smaller share of a rapidly growing economy, but we don't have a rapidly growing economy because the vast middle class and poor don't have enough purchasing power to allow it to grow. The rich would be better off with a smaller share of a rapidly growing economy than they are now with a huge share of an economy that is almost dead in the water. So really, just to summarize, there are two things that we have to do. One is widen the circle of prosperity and make sure that more of the economic gain go to more Americans. And secondly, we've got to make sure that our democracy is not corrupted by money.
Now, we have some questions from the audience, so let me bring in area code 402. Area code 402, what's your name?
My name is Vincent.
Vincent, do you have a question for Professor Reich?
Yes, I do. Within this last in the 2010 Congress passed a bill that gave us a portion of an audit of the Federal Reserve, which was the first time that's ever happened in the 100-year history of the Fed. And within that audit, we were able to find out that in 2008 they secretly gave money to foreign corporations, foreign banks, as well as domestic and banks and domestic corporations. And so basically, when they do that and they print that money out of thin air, basically what happens is the corporations receive that first, they spend it, so when they spend it, they get those assets, they benefit from it, and then it trickles down into the economy.
Vincent, do you have a question? Because this is all interesting, but I can answer your question.
Well, the question is, when it trickles down into the economy, the poor and the middle class have to pay higher prices at the grocery store. So doesn't that create a big inequality?
Yeah, I'm concerned about Fed policies that provide essentially zero interest loans to the big banks, big international banks, and the very wealthy who qualify for those loans, but at the same time could have an inflationary effect down the line, making prices rise for ordinary people. Most people I know, and most middle-class people and working-class people, they don't have access to those very, very low interest loans because they don't have the credit rating, or banks understandably are not making the loans that they were making before the Great Recession. So we've got to be very, very careful that Fed policy doesn't widen inequality. Now, the good news is that the new Fed chair, or the person who's been nominated to be the new Fed chair, Janet Yellen, I know very well, and I know that she is very, very concerned about inequality, and she's very concerned about jobs. She has the right values, and so it makes me more encouraged.
Excellent. We have another caller. 707. Do you have a question for Professor Reich, and what's your name?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. Hi. It's such an honor to be talking to you, and Professor Reich, and thank you, Egberto, for putting this together. I'm Robin Sunbeam from Ukiah, and I know that the solution that we at Move to Amend suggest is a constitutional amendment, but I know that you also are in favor of a constitutional amendment. That's a little, whatever you favor is a little different than ours. Can you discuss the differences between the Move to Amend constitutional amendment and the one that you support?
Well, I think that they're probably the same in terms of the goal, and that is to make sure that we reverse Citizens United. We kind of all agree, and most Americans agree with the principle that corporations are not people, and that the Supreme Court decision in Berkeley against Vallejo that said speech is money and money is speech is also wrong. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, we can worry about, and we can get the wording right, and I don't think the issue is the wording. The issue is just getting it going. I think that there should be a constitutional amendment, and we've got to make sure that Citizens United is reversed.
Professor, I have a concern here. We speak a whole lot about inequality and wealth and so forth. My problem is I don't see how we move from here as long as we have the current tax system that we have, and as long as we don't have some sort of and I hate to put it this way, but a work-based redistribution of wealth in the country. How can we get around that? If you have that much money, you grow?
Well, I think we have to definitely widen the circle of prosperity in this country. And whether it's by redistribution or a fairer tax system or making sure that Wall Street doesn't get out of control, of removing subsidies to Wall Street, removing subsidies to the oil and gas companies, removing subsidies and tax breaks to big agriculture, getting rid of all of the special treatment going to insurance companies. I mean, we could go, it's a very, very long list. I mean, the reason that so many industries and companies are treated so well and get subsidies and tax breaks is because they have lobbyists. The reason that so many wealthy people continue to have low tax rates and can classify so much of their income as capital gains is because they have lobbyists. They have a lot of political clout. So how do we take our country back? Well, one way we just talked about, and that is a constitutional amendment to reverse Citizens United. But that's just the beginning. We've also got policies, tax policies, financial policies, educational investments, infrastructure investments, a high minimum wage, a living wage, We've got to do a lot of things and also enable people to unionize much more easily, like Walmart workers and workers at fast food chains like McDonald's, who are paid now almost nothing, even though many of them are heads of households. A lot of things we've got to do. It's not going to happen if we just complain about it. It's going to happen only if we organize and we mobilize and we energize other people, if we create a political movement and that is disciplined and focused and builds on itself. 2016 is going to be a very, very important year. So is 2014. In 2014, next year, we've got all of Congress is going to be up for re-election. That is the House of Representatives. A third of the Senate is going to be up for re-election. In 2016, we elect a president. Now, we can just sit on our hands and complain to each other about all this, or we can get active politically. And I know many of you who are listening are active. You're getting involved in campaigns. Some of you may be running yourself. That's great. But for those of you who are not active, who are basically cynical about the system, and you are sitting on your hands and you're saying, well, it's a terrible, terrible thing, I would say the only answer is to become an active citizen.
Absolutely. Apathy is not an option. We have a caller from 360. Who's calling in?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm right here. This is Bob.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Sheila. And maybe I'm kind of dumb or something, but wouldn't reversing Citizens United, that would require the approval of Congress. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do you think that term limits would help this situation? And if so, how could we ever come about to make that happen?
Well, Sheila, you're pointing up something that is absolutely central to all of this. It's not term limits. I'm not sure I'm all that in favor of term limits, because what happens with term limits is you get people elected who then, once they're elected, don't feel any responsibility to the electorate at all, because they'll never be reelected again, and they figure, I can do whatever I want. But your larger point is that unless we make sure that people are elected who are going to reflect the will of the people rather than the will of the privileged and powerful and the biggest corporations and Wall Street, we don't have a chance, which gets me back to my former point. This is why all of us have got to get involved in the next election cycles. This is why we have got to work to change the system. This is why cynicism is so dangerous.
Professor, excellent. I don't know, do you have another minute, or because we're right at your 20 minutes at this point?
Oh, no, please, I'd be happy to take another question.
Excellent. Well, we don't have 619.
We do have another question from caller 619. Are you there, caller 619?
Yes. Hello?
What's your name?
My name is Michael.
What's your name?
My name is Michael.
And you have a question for the professor?
Yes, I do. Robert Reich, in your last blog, you said something about the most important thing is to reframe the discussion in the country. And I'm wondering what you think is the most effective way to go about that.
Well, I think that all of us have got to begin talking a different way about the central problem of the country. The central problem of the country is not the deficit, and it's not the size of government. The government size is actually shrinking, and the deficit is shrinking. The deficit, as a proportion of the total economy, is down to about the average it's been for the last 30 years. Government is smaller in terms of the number of government personnel, and certainly in relation to the size of the overall economy and the size of the overall population. The biggest central problem is widening inequality of income, wealth, and political power. And until we all make that point over and over again, and it's not just you and I and our friends and relations, we've got to persuade and show people who might disagree with us why this is true. We've got to have political leaders from the president on down who are framing the central problem in just the way I suggested. This economy, for example, is growing at a snail's pace. This is one of the most anemic recoveries on record. it's an anemic recovery not because a government is too big. It's an anemic recovery because the only way corporations and employers in general will hire and expand is if they have customers. But the vast middle class and most people who are aspiring to join the middle class, that is, people who are poor, none of us have enough money to keep the economy going. Paychecks are declining. The typical household is poorer today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. Most of the resources of the economy are going to the very top. 95% of the economic gains since 2009, since the recovery began, have gone to the top 1%. So there's no way the economy can function given what has happened to concentrated income and wealth. Our democracy is also under siege. It's not responding to what most people want. 60% of Americans said that they wanted some background check for guns. 70% of Americans want a raise, a substantial increase in the minimum wage. And I could go on and on and on. Nothing like that is happening because our representatives are not listening to most Americans. They're listening, again, mostly to the privileged and powerful. So the only way out for all of us, the only way to reverse this is for all of us to become organized and much more vocal, making a ruckus about what's happening to this country, to this economy, and to our democracy. And nothing will change. I can tell you I've been in Washington, I've been in the President's cabinet. Nothing will change until good people outside Washington put pressure on people in Washington, even good people in Washington, to make the changes that are necessary.
Excellent. We have one other call, 530. You're on.
Hi. I'm wondering, I get in a lot of online discussions with people about raising the minimum wage and all sorts of things, and I run into some attitudes, let me tell you, people who are just absolutely convinced that minimum wage jobs are, stepping stone jobs, and why should they be paid a living wage? They should, get creative and get educated and get out of those jobs. And, I'm beating my head up against it. How do we change attitudes?
Well, you have to give people the facts. I mean, the facts, first of all, are that unlike 25 years ago when fast food workers were teenagers and Walmart workers tended to be, people in families who were either retired or were not quite of working adults, college kids making additional money. No, today these low-wage workers are heads of families, or they're bringing home half of family income. They're adults, and they desperately need a raise. If they don't get it, the rest of us subsidize Walmart and McDonald's and the rest of them because these people who are working need food stamps, they need Medicaid, they need the Earned Income Tax Credit or reverse income tax. Well, it means that the rest of us are subsidizing Walmart and subsidizing McDonald's for not providing minimally adequate wages for their people. I mean, anybody who thinks that a low-wage worker is not working hard has never been a low-wage worker. Anybody who thinks that it's easy in America to move up the ladder and go from being a low-wage worker to being a middle-class or upper-middle-class worker doesn't have any idea what they're talking about. They've never experienced work. Many low-wage workers are working on more than one job. They're working on 2 or 3 jobs. They're barely living from paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to support their families, like you are, like I am. We're all in this together, and what has happened is that the policy and the strategy of a lot of the conservative forces in our society is to divide and conquer, to convince people who have less, the middle class, that their enemies are the people who have nothing. When in fact, what's happening is that more and more and more of the income and wealth of this country is going to the very top, to the top 1% or the top 1/10 of 1%. That's the issue. That's what we ought to be talking about. It's an economic issue, it's a political issue, it's a moral issue, it's the central issue of our time. So don't let anyone kind of digress or be caught in a distraction make sure that people understand the facts. Make sure they understand what's really at stake. And that's what we try to do with our movie, Inequality for All. We did the movie because we wanted to make sure that people understood the facts, that they were not bamboozled by some of the arguments like the trickle-down crew, who think that if you give tax breaks to people at the top, that everybody benefits because the benefits trickle down to everybody. Well, the fact is that nothing has trickled down. The typical worker is worse off, adjusted for inflation today, than the typical worker was 20 years ago. And if we simply look at the facts instead of the ideological assertions, we'll learn a great deal. Again, that's why we did Inequality for All. I hope you have a chance to see it. But in any event, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with all of you, and I really appreciate your attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Before you go, though, please tell us how people can give us the website so people can find out more about the movie and find out where the movie's playing near them.
Yes, it's just go to www.inequalityforall.com. There's a website there that shows, that tells you where the movie's playing, when it's going to be playing. Also gives you a lot of information about many of the issues we've been talking about today, from reversing Citizens United all the way through higher minimum wage and a more effective and more progressive tax system. So again, it's www.inequalityforall.com.